Welcome back, everyone, to another new episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. It's been a minute. Our last official guest was Casey Frederick, and we talked all about art therapy, who that's beneficial for, the kind of the areas she specializes in that, talked about some misconceptions that people have when we hear about art therapy out in the world. This week, Amanda and we decided to hop in, and we've had some guest scheduling mix-ups and changes, but we decided since today is Mother's Day, we would go ahead and do a Mother's Day special episode. So we're going to be recognizing mothers of all types and just talking about different dimensions of wellness when it comes to being a mother. So, hi, Amanda. It's always good to see you.
What up, friend? Yeah, I feel like we're getting into the season where, like, kids are out of school and families are traveling, and like as the weather gets warmer, I feel like, with as far as our guests reschedules, but always good for us to have time to just talk to each other. Because I think if you've been listening a while, you know that like Kelsi and I both live in Ohio, but we live like 3 hours apart. So these podcasts are like the one time we get to connect. And when we have a guest cancellation, obviously I'm sad, but I'm also kind of excited because I get one-on-one time with Kelsi.
Yeah, well, what can we talk about? What can we talk? And then today just happens to be Mother's Day Sunday. So I think it's a very important, even if it wasn't Mother's Day, it's an important thing to recognize. But since the occasion is here.
Yeah, so I don't know. I always feel some type of way because I'm thinking about it. I'm like, Mother's Day, okay, and then Father's Day is next month. I'm like, they just so like creatively put these Hallmark holidays like,
yeah,
back to back. And then I'm like, I see both sides of it. Like I appreciate the day as like a reminder because the life gets busy and we get caught up in the moment and we don't, be present in the moment and mindful and take it all in. So like part of me appreciates that there's this like special day to recognize. And then the other part of it is like that can be a lot of pressure for people. It can bring up so many emotions for folks. Like, it's splattered everywhere. It's on the TV, it's in stores, it's right. They have a whole section decorated with mom things and it's all over the internet. So that can be very overstimulating and activating for people too.
yes, 100%. And like, it's going to be so hard for me to stay grounded because, like, just because I'm not a mom, that doesn't mean, that I don't have, my own experiences being a, a childbearing age woman who is by choice childless. But then just in general, like I have a lot of people around me who have struggled with infertility. We'll put like some trigger warnings on here so people know that we'll be touching on these things. But I think it's important to be just overall, even if you're not a mother, but being mindful of and just empathetic of what the experience is and can be for many different types of people. I come from a blended family, so for me it's like I have a bunch of different mother figures, and my parents had me young, so I was definitely taken care of a good bit by my grandmother. So like I view her as a primary mother figure to me. So it's a very complex topic. I think we were going to try to keep it a little grounded by just talking about our good old foundational 8 dimensions of wellness, I believe.
Yeah. And I think even before we get into that, as you were talking, it made me think like, I don't know, it's like you feel like, and just tell me if I'm wrong, but like it seems like you feel like you have to clarify, like, even though I'm not a mom, I
Yeah.
can still connect. And like, as you're talking, I'm like, we all have like a primal, natural connection to motherhood, parenthood, caregiving in
Yes, everybody,
some
you get that
way.
comment. Yeah, everybody's like, "You're so good with kids," or like, I was like, "That's so different." Like, just because if I don't want my own children, or at this point in time, I may not, and it's like you get all of that, like from many different directions. Like, just because I'm not a mom, I feel like people get very, very defensive, and people aren't very mindful or empathetic of other people.
But that doesn't mean you live in a bubble, right? Like even people that don't want to or aren't able, to be a birth mom, it's like you had a mom
Yeah.
in some way, like, most of us have a connection to a mom or a mom figure. So that experience is valid to talk about in these conversations too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it gets very like separated and kind of like I even saw it. I mean, you see this like in movies or with other friend groups, but I kind of had kids like later than most of my friend groups. So you see them become parents and then slowly but surely, like they hang out with the other moms at the park and at playgroup. And I'm over here like with my non-childbearing friends. And I don't know. I just think we separate rather than coming together as a community for support in those ways.
I'm reading, and I think you're reading the same book as me as well, because I told you whenever I picked my copy up, but Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal. And I'm like a good chunk in there, and he starts talking about, just not just the expectations on mothers, but the judgment and oh my god, I almost just lost my whole train of thought. Oh my gosh, it was a really important one. Hold on. It'll come back to me. He was touching on something very specific and it literally just left my brain. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I got like almost 100 pages in, but I didn't get to that part in. I was actually just reading yesterday.
Oh, I
Highly
lost it.
recommend. Such a good book. Little Gabor Mate plug. If it comes
Yeah.
back to you, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, but then I also think it's really important to recognize like different experiences because we all live in this like we have these blinders on and it's like our own experiences and our own understanding of the world, and we kind of forget sometimes that there's other people with other experiences. Like how many people right now are grieving rather
Mhm.
than celebrating? How many people are you know grieving because they've lost their mother or mother figure, grieving because they want to be a mother so badly and they're unable to, grieving because they've lost children, right? Like we think that this can be a happy time, but also there's a lot of emotions that go into it. And these are everyday things. Like as therapists, as we talk about why it's so important to come see a therapist, even if you don't have like a significant mental health disorder or significant symptoms, everyday life like this of just naturally existing in the world and having a life, and then Mother's Day comes and Hallmark posts it everywhere, and now we have all sorts of feelings that come up.
Yes, definitely. And that thought still is not going to come back to me. I kept trying and trying, and the harder I try, the more it disappears.
But if you
Um,
connect that to like the stress disease connection, these
yeah,
feelings probably come up, and we see it in our therapy sessions with clients. Like we start to
100%.
identify patterns of like, oh, so every year on this holiday or every year in summertime, like whatever that looks like, we kind of identify these correlations. And if we don't heal those inner wounds, that can become toxic to our health, our physical health. Not,
Yeah,
we said we were going to touch on all the dimensions of wellness. So there's emotional and physical, right?
literally. So,
We
yeah,
talked about social a little bit there, with like different friend groups and
I think that so it's vaguely in my brain, but so in that part I was just reading, he was talking about our roots and what it used to look like way back with our ancestors and what it looked like to raise a child. And how the community aspect was so different. I think that's where that came up earlier for me, was when you were talking about like the connections with other people and okay, I'm not at the exact same place as everybody, so then I feel so on the outside, likely unintentionally. But he went kind of in depth in a section I was just reading, talking about how it was when that's where the saying "it takes a village" comes from. And now here we are in our society, the capitalistic, westernized world, trying to do all of the same things, but with things looking and feeling radically different, and the expectations being so like, you better be able to handle all of this on your own.
yeah, I actually saw a post the other, I might have even shared it. It was like, like millennial moms that were taught it is so important to have an education and a career and be able to provide for yourself, but also um
Do all this too.
everything
Have
for
this.
your child. Yeah. And like the pressure. And I absolutely feel that. I mean, entrepreneur life, business owner life, like it's a full-time job and parent situation in itself of
Yeah, I
raising
say
that.
all the time. I catch myself and myself in moments all the time, saying, I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to have another little person to take care of in the midst of all of the things. So
So that kind of filters into like occupational. And I know we recently had Tiffany Lewis on, and we've had a couple other people that have come on. Like I know Kendra talked about momhood and stuff. And I just think like we've just learned to figure it out. but we're
Yeah.
not doing that well, and no one's really talking about it, right? Like we're not building those
You figure it out. And but then if there's emotions, or if you are struggling in the figuring it out process, the expectation that's on mothers of all types to just, you're supposed to look good and look happy, like you love it and it's the best thing ever all the time. And if you complain about it, um, that means that you hate your children and you wish that they didn't exist anymore. And I'm like, why is
You
that this?
literally can't ever win. Like there's just no,
No.
I mean, that's like a lot of things in life too, but someone's always gonna have judge. And I see it even like I try so hard to be an unbiased, non-judgmental person. And now that I'm a mom, it's even harder because I'm like, it's kind of chilly out and the baby don't have no clothes on. Oh,
Yeah,
wait, there's a little child running around. I cannot leave this area until I find where their caregiver is. Like, what's happening? Right? Like, there's so many times that I'm like hyper aware.
hyper aware. Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh.
into that occupational life, like, thankfully working for myself now, I have so much better work. There's no real bad ones, right? But I have more control of that ability. Whereas like in typical work settings, business settings, especially in corporate world, it is like, you don't really talk about that, or you fear that you're gonna not get promotions or be respected, or
Mhm.
you know, get as many opportunities as people that don't have children, because you're not able to stay late for that extra meeting for the project, or you're not able to go out and schmooze after
Oh,
hours, or those kind of like relationship based growth opportunities in
right.
those workplaces.
Because how dare we in our world right now have boundaries with each of our, to try to keep these dimensions. They're never going to be in balance. We say that all the time, but when it comes to like occupational specifically and the other areas of our life, it's like they're not set up to like coexist. I feel like they're set up to almost like clash with each other rather than like, oh, okay, like this is a giant system. How do we get these pieces to move, with each other? It's like uh, everything down to, the like childcare. Like I was very, my parents had the privilege of, having, their parents who could step in and help because like I said, my parents were teen parents. So I, because my parents were young and, had to make it in this world, like I would spend a good bit of time there and things. But if some people don't have family, then you get into the financial dimension of wellness, having to pay for the childcare, and if you don't, then that can impact your own occupational presence and
Or just even people that are now being stay-at-home moms because childcare didn't make sense for the amount it costs for them to
no.
work. Like they were working to pay childcare basically. And I just think it's so interesting because like there's a it's like a big friction. Like, I support you, be a mom, be a really great mom. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's wonderful. It's a wonderful value. It's the best thing you'll ever do. Oh, kids are precious. Oh yeah, be a great employee, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, but not
we're
like
still family oriented
you
here.
you brought your kid to a work event. Or I mean, and still like I have to get out of that own programming myself because I'm still a new parent. So those old things are in me, like you brought your kids here, like that's not appropriate type thing. Or like, and we just don't do well as a society with that. I in the very beginning with Rain, when he was still little, I would bring him to these like networking meetings and things like that, and I could make it work for a little while. And then once he was on the go, it was just he's loud and yelling and
All
crawling
over.
and getting into everything and eating everything, and it's a just I'm fine and I can participate in that way because my life is chaotic like that and I have ADHD, so I'm always distracted. But just the judgment and the peering looks that you feel from others because of that, like, makes you feel like, what are you doing here? You don't have your life together. Oh, this girl has
Mhm.
a business. Like, I don't want to, and like all these thoughts
Yeah.
that may or may not be real, like start to kind of come in your head. And because no one's really saying, yeah, it's okay. Or here, no one has a space made for family friendly environments like that. It's very exclusionary.
Yeah, I will never forget. I don't know why this memory popped up in my brain, but um I remember, and that's why I love the social work major and just field so much, because I had, I think, multiple professors, but one specifically that, like, if it came down to you missing class or making it to class, like having your, if you having your childcare for your child, if it meant, like, if that fell through one day, um, they were like, if it means you're gonna miss class, bring your little one with you. Like, it was normalized in there, and it was like one of the first spaces and one of the very few and last spaces I've ever seen that in a classroom, like in a college setting. And
Mhm.
like this professor, I had a professor who would like hold somebody's baby while lecturing, and that person was taking notes. It's like, I seen a thing circulating on social media like here recently, but like I had a professor, Dr. Lisa Skeens, loved her to death. Like, she was just so humanizing. Like, this is what we're here. Like, we're going to be working with humans, and we got to treat one another like we're more alike than we are different. Like, we're here for a common purpose. And it was like, it shouldn't be that mind blowing to see that happening, but it was, and it still is.
Yeah, and part of me, well, you said it's social work too, but part of me is like, is
Yeah.
that because it's
I
Southern?
said, like, that's why,
Like the
and
Southern culture part of it too, is that,
yeah.
more likely in that area too?
And I'm also like, would that happen for like in a physics major class? Like, I don't know, probably not. Probably wouldn't happen in a chemistry
Mm-mm.
lecture
Or a
setting. Probably.
business class, or yeah.
But yeah, it's like all so intertwined. It's like, okay, well, if one thing, happens, then so many other areas are implicated. And I don't feel like we have the most, like in our field, the biopsychosocial, we don't use that framework to look
Mhm.
at things as one person, but who's a mother, and all of the systems at play in that person's life that's influenced by motherhood.
Yeah, and the amount of people that think that they like deserve an opinion about your child
Mhm.
is wild too, like in all the ways. It's like they want, it's like it's a feeling of like community in that way. Like
Yeah,
when I want to be able to tell you what to do and how to do it, then
right.
community
How I
matters.
did things, then this is community.
Yeah, but like when we're out here on our own, like going through postpartum depression, anxieties, postpartum psychosis, right? Or like, just at the thralls of it, sleeping 3 hours a night in the beginning and
Mhm.
questioning yourself and having your own trauma wounds and attachment wounds come up that no one prepared you for. There's right, like where's the community there? So we have to do a lot better. Like one day, I think my whole point of all of this is like one day to recognize is cool. And also we need
One
some
more thing
structural
to share.
changes here, right? Like it's kind of like cool, like we have this awareness month or this awareness day or whatever it is for whatever population that is really disenfranchised. But also, can we like do things systemically to make things in existence just better in general?
Right. And not just buying a gift, or, and being like, here you go. That's you can feel recognized. But I it just I don't know if that would make people feel like actually seen and um acknowledged, and be like, hey, we see that you need these things. Um, how do we, support one another in getting needs met?
Yeah. The other cool thing I'll say is that when you become a mom though, there's like this like code of like a little bit of community, like no matter what. Like I was out to like Mexican on Cinco de Mayo,
Oh.
of course, because I am who I am. And I look over at this table and there's a mom just got like a little, I don't know, 2, 3 month old just on their lap, just sitting there rocking and just talking to her friend across the table. And then they stop talking and the friend looks at me because I looked at the baby and I'm like,
I
like I'm just over here like
yeah.
pointing and I'm like the baby spit up, but like like there's just like there's a little bit of like mom code of like, oh, or like like we were on the airplane and this mom like was wearing her baby, but then she was trying to get up and get her luggage and stuff, and I'm like, here, can I help you, like let me hear like whatever, right? Like there's
Yeah.
just this extra layer once you are a mom.
Uh-huh. You
It's like
see it.
you now
Yeah.
look out for these things and look out for each other in that way, but like I said, it's like separated because then the ones that can't identify with that existence for whatever reason, it's
Yeah.
very Yeah, we could honestly go on about this topic all day, but people don't want to listen to us just like talk to each other all day. So maybe we should wrap it up. Are there any dimensions that we're missing? Spiritual
Spirit.
and
Ooh, that one could be a big one.
environmental,
Environmental,
which we kind of talked about with like your community and like lack of resources and support.
social, emotional. I know you kind of touched on it, and as far as the like mental health,
Mhm.
like the adjustment, like adjusting to motherhood. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I think that's a big one. That is in our world, it's like, oh, you just gotta, it goes right through me, and I'm not a mom, but like lose the baby weight and just get back, to it, and where the maternity leave stuff and but the
6 weeks,
silence.
6 weeks from like major trauma to your body. And yeah,
Oh,
it's wild to me. Yeah. And I'm a mental health provider. Like I don't obviously don't specialize in like perinatal or maternal mental, like that's not something I specialize in, but you would think just in general, I would have been more prepared for what that transition hormonally, mentally, emotionally would be. Like it was so visceral that I can't even describe
I
it.
was gonna say, I think we can logic it and
Yeah.
like logically be like, I know that this is gonna, shift or feel different or be impacted. But like we always say, the way that it's actually felt and experienced, you can't prepare for that.
And no one talks about it, just like me and you say. Like, this is why we do a podcast, to give education and information out there to the community, to like, here's some skills and things that you should know, because the world's not going to teach it to you. It's like no one said anything to me. Like my I had a really wonderful midwife, and she was very supportive emotionally, but still it wasn't like, hey, just so you're aware, sometimes these things can happen. Hey, partner or other support system, these are things you can look out for, to be mindful of, just in case. I got the folder with like discharge paperwork and like I don't know, like lactation support resource, whatever, like the little folder they gave me at the hospital was, with a tiny little insert about postpartum depression. They didn't talk about, no one talked to me about it. No one talked about postpartum anxiety or postpartum psychosis, right? And it's always lumped into that category. And there was not a single conversation about it.
Like I want to use the word terrifying, but I don't want that to be like misinterpreted. Like, because this is such a, it's like such a part of like that human experience. And it's just like, I think it goes along with the like, as I don't want to gender this and it not be fair, but I feel like as women, I can speak as, as a woman in general and just say, we're just expected to have it all together and be okay. Like, just handle it. Like, oh, well, you know, you'll be fine. This is just what it is now. And it's like, but there's actual, I worked with a client, and again, I don't specialize in this, and her pregnancy came, she was actually getting ready to move, and I probably would have referred anyways. But long story short, I remember her sharing with me having thoughts of self-harm or suicidal ideation, or having feelings of like not wanting to, connect with her baby, and and feeling very disconnected, and the amount of shame like that she was carrying and not having anybody else to share that with, didn't even feel safe to share it with her medical provider.
Because there's so much judgment.
And she's like, even the things are worded as like, are you feeling depressed today? And like, and at the hot doctor, and she's like, I mean, maybe not in this moment. So she checks like no or whatever. And then nobody asks anything ever again. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Oh, here comes our soapbox. Yeah, I was actually at the part of the Myth of Normal book about, well, I'm sure the whole book is like this, but talking about how like over and over and over again, even like the specialist of specialists that know and realize and are looking at these things with their patients, don't disclose that or talk about it with other medical providers, because they fear the judgment of like the importance of actually looking at things, which is weird to me, but that's a whole other topic and I'm not
Yeah,
going to go there today. But
those things happen. They happen often, and they happen way more. It's just like other types of, trauma that goes very, very unreported. and not talked about. And if those things are happening for you, you are not alone. Because I feel like we're made it, like we said, I think the theme of this is we kind of fall to this place of everybody living in their separate bubble and then not coming together and connecting and realizing like, oh yeah, like I'm not alone in these things that come along with motherhood and being a type of a mother and adjusting to that.
And just like how much, I don't want to say less, how I have a picture in my head and I'm trying hard to verbalize it. Like I just think about all these experiences of like infertility and grief related to motherhood and so many emotions, heavy emotions. And if we were coming together as a community better to support one another in general, I want to say how much less of an impact those things would feel, but that's not the right word.
How different they would look,
Like how much more supported would we feel? How much better would our quality of life be? How much better would our coping be? How much better would our physical health be? Yeah.
Like the outcomes and the symptoms that result from these things, what would they look like if these systemic and communal factors were present?
Yeah, because we know like mental health, substance, all these like unhelpful coping mechanisms and symptoms breed in isolation. And so if we feel these heavy things because of whatever or whatever feelings that are valid that are being related to motherhood, if we had that community support rather than just sitting in isolation with that shame, guilt, fear, sadness, you know, whatever it is. And then the joy, like, and then being able to celebrate the joy too, you know.
100%.
We could talk about this all day, obviously, like everything we talk about, but
yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today to our Mother's Day episode. If you are feeling like you need support, there is a 988 crisis line. You are welcome to reach out to anytime. You can text or call. We will be back in 2 weeks. We are going to have another TikTok friend, mental health therapist, Aaron Kennel, and he's going to be talking about mental health and school-based therapy. And I think we haven't talked about that since like D. James was on. I said a year ago when I shared it in our stories, but I think it was actually 2 years ago. So I'm excited to be able to talk about that and explore, you know, youth mental health right now is so very important. So that's going to be a great topic. All right, everyone, make sure you are subscribed and have your notifications turned on so you know when the latest episode is. Feel free to give us your comments and feedback, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Okay.